This episode today is a very interesting one. How did a 75-ton airliner with no engines glide over Manhattan, miss every bridge, every building and every boat, and end with all 155 people standing on the wings alive? Let's find out. In this video, you will hear what happened in that cockpit during 208 seconds. You will learn why a textbook bird strike turned into the closest call in modern American aviation. And you will see every point along the way where one different decisions, one different second of timing would have meant a different ending. Because here is the part that doesn't get told often enough, this flight should not have been survivable. Let me show you why. The flight was a US Airways 1549, scheduled out of New York's LaGuardia airport on a cold Thursday afternoon, the 15th of January 2009. The aircraft was an Airbus A320, registration November 106 Uniform Sierra. It was 9 years old. It was bound for Charlotte, North Carolina. In the left seat was Captain Chesley Sullenberger, 57 years old, former US Air Force fighter pilot. He had over 19,000 flight hours with more than 4,000 on the Airbus A320. He was also a glider pilot, a detail that 8 minutes after takeoff was about to matter more than anyone could have predicted. In the right seat was First Officer Jeffrey Skiles, 49 years old, 20,000 flight hours. But critically, this was his very first trip on the A320 after his transition training. He had been flying the aircraft for less than a week. And behind him, in the cabin, were 3 veteran flight attendants and 150 passengers, heading home, heading to meetings, heading to vacations. 155 people in total. At 3:25 in the afternoon, US Airways 1549 pushed back from the gate. At 3:26, taxi clearance. At 3:27 and 35 seconds, takeoff clearance from runway 4. The aircraft accelerated, rotated, and climbed into the bright winter sky over Queens. New York departure handed them off and told them to climb to 15,000 feet. Skiles was flying the leg. Sullenberger was on the radios. For the first 90 seconds, this was an entirely normal flight. At 15:27 and 11 seconds local time, about 2 minutes and 50 seconds after takeoff, the aircraft was passing through 2,800 feet, climbing when it flew through a flock of Canada geese. These weren't small birds. Adult Canada geese can weigh as much as 10 or 12 pounds, heavy enough that the A320's engine, which are certified to ingest birds up to 4 pounds, had no chance. The cockpit voice recorder picked it up. Captain said, "Birds." The next sound was the impact, described by the witness as ice slamming into the fuselage. Both engines ingested geese simultaneously. The cabin filled with the smell of burning birds and jet fuel, and every single passenger watched the engines stop turning. The aircraft was now a glider at 2,800 feet over the most densely populated city in the United States. From bird strike to splashdown, Sullenberger and Skiles had 208 seconds, 3 minutes and 28 seconds, less time than it takes to make a cup of coffee Within the first 20 seconds, Sullenberger took the control. He simply said, "My aircraft." Skiles immediately began the engine restart checklist. He never finished it. The engines were structurally damaged. They were never coming back. Sullenberger keyed the radio. Captain said, "Mayday, mayday, this is Cactus 539. Hit birds, we've lost thrust in both engines. We are turning back towards LaGuardia." But here is the first thing that should have killed everyone. Sullenberger called that the wrong flight number. He said 1539. The actual flight number was 1549. In a normal emergency, that confusion alone could have cost critical seconds. But it didn't, because the controller, a man named Patrick Hudson, adjusted instantly and stayed with him. LaGuardia approach offered runway 13. Sullenberger evaluated in seconds that he couldn't make it. He requested Teterboro Airport, just across the river in New Jersey. The controller cleared the entire airspace around the Teterboro in seconds. Sullenberger evaluated again, couldn't make it Teterboro either. That left exactly one place. Captain said, "We can't do it. We are gonna be in the Hudson." At 15:30 and 43 seconds in the afternoon, Sullenberger leveled the wings, raised the nose to a precise pitch attitude, and brought the Airbus A320 down onto the surface of the Hudson River. The aircraft touched down at roughly 150 miles per hour. The fuselage skipped, settled, and came to the rest near the west side of Manhattan. Inside the cabin, just before touchdown, Sullenberger keyed the public address microphone and said 2 words. The captain said, "Brace for impact." That was the first time most of the passengers realized this wasn't a routine emergency. The aircraft came to rest in water that was 36 degrees Fahrenheit. Hypothermia in that water can set in within minutes. But, and this is the next thing that should have never worked, the first commuter ferry, Thomas Jefferson, was already moving towards the aircraft within 90 seconds of the splashdown. The captain had seen the airplane come down, so had 3 other ferries within minutes. Hundreds of passengers were being pulled from the wings and from the slide rafts. Every single person on board, 155 people, survived. The National Transportation Safety Board investigation took almost 18 months. The probable cause in plain language, the ingestion of large bears into both engines, leading to total thrust loss, followed by forced ditching. But the investigation went further. NTSB simulator runs tested whether Sullenberger could have made it back to LaGuardia or to Teterboro. With instant decision making, no realistic stratal response, and perfect technique, pilots could occasionally make those airports. With realistic delay added in, the kind of pause any human takes when the world ends in their cockpit, they could not. Sullenberger had made the only choice that worked. The Federal Aviation Administration changed bird strike reporting requirements. Engine certification standards were reviewed. The investigation reaffirmed the value of training pilots for high altitude dual engine out scenario, something that before 1549 was barely in the syllabus. And the Cockpit Resource Management Corporation between Sullenberger and Skiles, 2 pilots who'd never flown together before that morning, became required reading material in pilot training programs around the world. It wasn't a miracle. It was decades of training. 2 pilots who didn't know each other, 4 ferry captains who didn't hesitate, 1 air traffic controller who stayed calm, and a river that happened to be wide enough. Every single one of those things had to go right, and every single one of them did. Thanks for watching After the Black Box. If this is the kind of story you want more of, hit subscribe. It really does help us. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you enjoyed this video.